everyone. As everybody joins, you can introduce yourself in the chat, say where you're from, what university you're from, what project you'll be working on. We're excited to get to know you. I'm seeing some introductions in the chat. We'd like more. We can also invite people to turn their mic on and introduce themselves if anybody would like that. If so, please raise your hand. We're excited to get to know you. I see a hand raised.
All right. Extraction from Uganda, and I'm really so glad to be part of this webinar. Thank you.
Welcome. I'll introduce myself too. I'm Carmen. I'm from Madrid. I study at IU University, and I'm also campus director and a fellow for the class of this year of 2024. Would anybody else like to introduce themselves? So please raise your hand. There's still one raised. Two hands raised. Please go ahead.
I am David from Sierra Leone, Public College University of China.
Hello, I hope you're doing well. I'm Raima from Cote d'Ivoire. Nice to meet you.
Hello everybody. I am Abu Kamara from Sierra Leone, West Africa, a student pursuing business management at Jala University at Jala campus.
Hi everyone.
Hello everyone. Thank you so much for hello everyone. Thank you so much for please. I'll just request that please mute yourself and then the moderator will call on you to speak. Just raise your hand, but keep yourself muted just so that we are able to move in a more organized manner. So I will just request everyone to kindly mute, and then Carmen, if you can just take control and call on anyone who has their hand raised, we will we'll move on your command.
Okay, so let's start with Annette. If you could please introduce yourself.
Okay, thank you everyone. My name is Annette Naiga from Uganda Methodist University in Uganda. Thank you.
Thank you. And can we get Ijaz to introduce themselves? Ijaz Ahmad. If they can't unmute themselves, then
Hello.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Hello everyone. I am Ijaz Ahmad from the University of Peshawar of Pakistan. I am working on enhancing technical education and skills development in my area, and I am so glad to be surrounded by such naive and keen mind from all over the world. Thank you so much for giving me this amazing opportunity of introducing myself.
I also see Jean Damour has raised their hand if they want to introduce themselves. If they can, could Husna?
Hi everyone. Thank you for having me over here. I am Husna Noor, a final year medical student from Rawalpindi Medical University, Pakistan, majoring in allied health sciences, and I am really excited to be here.
I also see Innocent has their hand raised if they would like to introduce themselves.
Hello everyone. I am Innocent Itubilume, and I'm here in Nigeria at the University of Ilorin, where I'm undergoing a BSc program in food science. And my social impact project is food safety on campus and beyond. And I'll be working with on SDG 3 and UNAI 3. Thank you very much.
I also saw Shan had their mic unmuted if they want to introduce themselves before we move on to the speaker. If not, you could always introduce yourself in the chat so we can read after. And I'm going to be introducing the speaker now. As you know, Adam Mostogol. Now, in any given week, Adam might be helping entrepreneurs to kickstart their business ideas, stimulating small businesses to challenge the status quo, challenging communities to understand their potential, or teaching hundreds of students to embrace innovation to solve the problems of the future. Adam is the CEO and chief entrepreneur of the Van Diemen Project, founder and inspirer at the Illuminate Fund Education Australia, facilitator of the Shift Lab, Tasmania's first social impact incubator, and has been acknowledged in the 2023 Australia's 40 Under 40 Executives and Entrepreneurs, 2017's Australia 30 Under 30 Entrepreneurs, and 2015 finalist for Young Australian of the Year. Adam, welcome.
Hello. Fantastic to be here. All right. Well, I might run through a couple of things with you all as we, it's great to see so many people from all over the place for our chat, and I might just run through a couple of things to start with, and then we can have a bit of a conversation. I am so here for the questions and the discussion that we are going to have. And so please, obviously, get ready for those questions as we go through. But look, I want to begin actually my contribution to this group by first acknowledging the traditional custodians, the land of where I am gathered on. Even though I live in Tasmania, I'm actually in Western Australia at the moment. But we always sort of acknowledge our traditional custodians, those who've looked after those lands for generations before us. And I find it really important to pay our respects to that. And so really excited to be able to share that and pay my respects. And I'm sure for all of you, that connection to country is really, really powerful. It's an absolute honour to be here with MCN, United Nations Academic Impact. Great work around the Millennium Fellowship. It's so good to see so many people here today. You've actually done most of the introduction, Carmen. I normally sort of have a little slide here that, we'll go this way, that sort of says what I do. As mentioned, I work in education. I help young people solve the biggest problems they see in their local community. And we do that through Illuminate. We've taught around 23,000 students all across Australia how they can do that. The Van Diemen Project is a business and impact advisory organisation. I've probably helped about 1,200 people in the last 3 years start their own business, and obviously sort of interacted with thousands more since that. And as mentioned, run our state's first social impact incubator, which is probably some of the stuff that's relevant for this conversation. And only a couple of weeks ago, I was actually listed in Australia's most influential educators. But I think you managed to nail everything else, Carmen, in the introduction, which was awesome. And so with that, I want to kind of just, as I said, jump into some of the things that I want to share with you. As you embark on this incredible fellowship journey, I really want to share with you what it takes to drive change, because I feel like that's a really important place to start. And so I want to jump to that. I'm going to put some text on the screen here as I go through. Otherwise, I just want to chat with you and talk to you about this, just some things from my perspective. One of the biggest things, I love to read. I love to sort of adopt information from other people who say it far more elegantly than I ever will. And one of the first books that I love to sort of reference and talk to is there's a fantastic book, Marcus Buckingham's book, 9 Lies About Work, about the way work actually is rather than the way that we still teach it. And it's a book that I absolutely love, and I recommend reading the whole thing. And I apologize because there's 9 lies in the book, and I'm telling you the 9th one. So kind of spoiler alert if you're going to read it, but trust me, it's worth picking it up. But it's one that sticks with me, and I want to encourage you with this as you go on this journey. The final lie that the book has is that leadership is a lie. It talks about the fact that simply going to a leadership conference and ask the question, does that make you a better leader? And it doesn't. Simply being put in a position of leadership, does that automatically make you the world's best leader? And it doesn't. We've seen people who are put in leadership roles who they aren't really leaders, and simply just going and learning is not enough. People who lead change in our world also haven't necessarily been leaders. They've just done something that's incredible, and people have followed them on that journey. And they've had followers who listen to where they're going and join them where they're heading to. And so the term that I love, and I love that you guys are all fellows, because for me, it works really closely to this. And I guess for me, the first thing I encourage you is to not lead change in what you do, but I probably just want to start you by encouraging that fellowship matters. It's about leading change and having other people go with you on that journey. You get to be part of forums and sessions like this, but there are others that look to you and they learn from you and they go with you where you're going because they trust you. And so it's not about leadership and telling people where to go. For me, it's about fellowship and building a relationship with people who trust you, who go with you where you're going. And so it's not just about being a good leader, it's actually asking the question, are you someone worth following? And when you're following someone, it's a little bit different. It's not about someone who stands at the front of the room and tells people what to do. And like we've seen those leaders, but it's about earning trust, earning respect of those around you, sharing your story, your experience, investing into others. Leadership's not just about awards, it's about open, honest, and creating true, meaningful connection. And I love then when you start to think about this and you start to go, okay, we talk about following people. The question becomes, would you follow you where you are right now? Would you follow the person that you are? And if not, what are some of those things that need to change? Because the great part is that if you're following someone on their leadership journey, you're invested in what they're telling you and their story and their journey and the ups and the downs. And it's sitting there going, can you have a journey like that? And are you sharing a journey with others around you so that you can follow? Because it's really important to understand. And when you start to move away from leadership and you move into this term of fellowship, for me, the really best part is you don't actually have to be in a position of leadership to be leading change. Because when you think about someone worth following, well, everyone can be worthy of being followed. And so everyone, no matter what your role is, no matter what you do, you can be someone worth following. I spent 2 years living in the west coast of Tasmania in a remote area. It's about 10 years ago now, that was. And I was like involved in the community. I was just helping out where I could. But I started to get these phone calls from people who were going, hey, I want to start a business in your town and I've been told I need to connect with you. And look, I was in my mid-20s at the time, and these people shouted me a coffee or they shouted me lunch. So I was never going to say no. But and I just enjoyed the connections and the stories and what they were doing. But after a few of these meetings, I started to ask questions and go, hey, like, how did you get my number? How did you know who I was? And I found out that it was the mayor they were calling. They're the mayor of the town. And they would call him up and they'd go, we want to know what's happening because we want to start a business. And the mayor would just go, oh, look, I don't know that much about business, but you've got to meet this Adam bloke. Adam knows what he's talking about. And so they would connect with me and I wasn't in a leadership role. I just did what I did, and people liked that journey, the experience, and the perspectives that I had. So for all of you, as you're going on your journey, you don't have to be in a leadership role. You just have to drive change and have people follow you on that journey. That journey of fellowship really, really matters. I actually really like the term when we talk about being someone worth following. We have this term in Australia about being a good ancestor, and that's one that I encourage you to think about. Being a good ancestor, thinking about the legacy that you'll leave for your generations that follow you as they look back to you. And it's not just about the wealth, because it's not about the money that we leave at the end of the day. It's about the impact and the investment that we've left in others, the inspiration you can have through every discussion, every impact project that you can do. You influence one person's life, and that is amazing and incredible, and it's worth doing. And so don't follow people in that. So don't just lead people because you're a leader. Create a journey that's worth following in this journey as we go forward. Because you've all got incredible journeys, and some of you, you're still working it out, but that's okay. I encourage you to think about how you leave that fantastic legacy. But with that, also know that you are starting on your journey with your impact projects and embarking on this, and you've got some really cool things that you're working on. And I wanted to probably share two big things before, as I said, I open up to questions and just have a bit of a chat. And these are based on what we do with students, but also what we do in the Shift Lab, the social impact incubator that I run. Now, I'm an architect by training, and so I come at things from a design approach. And always, whenever you are designing something, for me, the first thing is always, you've got to start with the problem. What is the thing that you are trying to change? And for some of you, it will make sense because you're used to this, but for those who don't, I encourage you to take the time to start with what the problem is that you're trying to solve. Because if you're trying to get support from people, people need to understand what you see. We all have vastly different life experiences. We've got different passions and we've got different interests. And so with that, if you want to get people to come on the journey with you, to follow you, you need them to see the problem as you see it so that they can get invested in the same worldview. Because if they don't know it, they will not back you. They will not get on board with you. So you need to invite people in to come with you on that journey to solve the problem. In this, and we use some very specific language in our programs, we talk about not solving for them. And when I talk about this, the moment that you start talking about someone else that you do not know when you are trying to create your impact project, and you say, oh, they have this problem, you're not talking about something you know in your heart. You're not talking about it from a lived experience perspective. We have students from schools that, for example, that try and solve homelessness that have never slept rough for a night. They don't know what's going on because they're solving for them because they think it's a good thing to do. You all have incredible lived experience with what you do. And so first of all, you've got to value that lived experience. If you're still trying to work out what this impact project is going to be, look at what's in your own background, in your own life experience, and then interview others and learn from those around you. Because often, like, I find people in cities try and solve problems for people in regional areas and they just don't get it. People in regional areas trying to solve problems for cities, it doesn't work. And so it's really important that we understand if we're going to be the change in the world that we want to see, we've got to face the problems that we connect with. The social impact incubator that I run is built on this. It's actually built on someone's lived experience, because I have found too often people who have lived through a challenge are excluded from the decisions that determine their own situation. We ask for, in our Shift Lab, we ask for people what's their lived experience. We ask them what their superpower is. What are they amazing at? What is the problem and how has it affected them? And maybe if they've got an idea, tell us their idea. But we know that if someone has the problem and has lived it and experienced it, they can come back at this with a really respectful manner and they can solve it because they know what it means to live through that challenge. And so for all of you, prioritize the voice of those around you that have lived similar things, because you know that that lived experience is so important. Now, I'm going to jump a little bit further ahead. As you go out and you build these projects, it's really important that your impact matters and your data matters, because we know in this world, we measure what matters to us, which is why, sadly, finance is normally the thing we track. We track the numbers. We look at that in a business perspective. But in your projects, there is something more important than money. It's the difference and the impact that you will make. So when you think about designing your projects and embarking on this journey, I just want to put in that radar, what are you going to measure? Because we measure what matters. And if we can measure the impact, if we can measure the change, then we can tell people a story about the difference that we are making. And really importantly, change doesn't occur overnight. It's really easy to measure the simple stuff. I can have a look and see how many people are on this call and go, hey, this is amazing. Look how many people turned up and listened, and do some quick feedback. But for me, change takes time. We need to think about the medium and the long-term change that we're trying to create. If we've got a process that we're trying to do that says, hey, we're going to start here, but we know this is where we're aiming for, then we need to count that impact and whether it works or not on that medium and long-term goal, because we count what matters at the end of the day. And so I encourage you, if we measure what matters, we've got to count the change that we are making over time. You're trying to solve a problem. How do you know you've solved it? We've got to check that over time. The Shift Lab, we had the opportunity of having some funding from the government, and they gave us attendance metrics. How many people turned up and did they stay in the program? But for me, it's a social impact incubator. It's not a babysitting club. It's not just how many people turned up. For me, it was all about what was the difference these ideas made. And so we created our theory of change, and we said, well, our purpose is that we want to see these businesses start and scale. And so while we were asked to generate an attendance list, we then looked at what the difference those businesses made. And we look at that, they generated over $75,000 worth of revenue each as they grew and they started. In the first 12 months, they generated paid employment hours and they made a difference to their community. And when you think about it, which one would you want to be part of? One that can tell you how many people turned up every day, or the one that took some time to measure some real impact data and said, this is the difference that we make. And so as you go on your journey and create what you want to create, like count the change that you're making and then use the numbers to tell the story of the difference, because you have a heart reason on why this works. You're going to interact with people. You're going to change their lives. You are going to feel it. But then the numbers validate and showcase that this is the difference. It's a number that says what you feel is making a massive difference. They speak to the impact story that you're making. And then you can talk to the emotions. I find every time I put numbers up on a screen with people that have interacted with what we do, they sort of sit there and go, the numbers only tell half the story, and that's okay, because then we all tell the story together. You have incredible impact with what you can create. So use the numbers to tell the story, remembering that what measure what matters. And if you want to measure impact, make sure that you count it, you check it, and you build it into your projects as you go forward. And I guess before I open up for some questions, while I've sort of shared some of this stuff, some of you are probably wondering, okay, where do I start? How do I go ahead? How do I do this? Adam, you do this entrepreneurship business thing. That's not me. But for me, entrepreneurs are doers at the end of the day. And I guess you all are going to go out and do. And the best quote I've ever picked up is this one, which is, don't wait for it to be perfect. Mark Randolph, the co-founder and first CEO of Netflix, he talks about there's no such thing as a good idea. Because Netflix, when you think about it, sounds like a good idea, but it never started that way. They tested it, they tried something, and then it worked. And for all of you in your projects, do not wait till they're perfect. You don't have long enough. There are people that need your projects now. And so test it, try it, build it as it goes. It will never be perfect the first time, but it will be better every single time you test it. And so you're not about a massive multi-billion-dollar idea. You're just about changing someone's life for the better. And so you shouldn't wait for that. You might test it and try it and build it, but don't wait for perfect. Make it good enough and build it out from there. So start when you're ready, but don't make it perfect. Just get it out there and see what people do. Solve for those that live around you, that know your lived experience and value that in this process. And really importantly, tell the story so people follow you, and the numbers have a really important role with that. That is me sharing a bit of an introduction, but I feel like, Carmen, you might have some questions for me. And so I'm really keen just to have a chat and have a talk with you all.
Yeah. So let's start with a question that I have. To preface it, there's of course a gap between what looks good in theory and what will have the most positive impact practically. What would you suggest we as young leaders keep in mind when we think of solutions to humanity's pressing issues and advance SDGs?
That's such a big question to start with.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that you've got to really think about is like you're never going to solve it for everybody the first time. And so we talk about from an entrepreneurship angle, we talk about a beachhead market. Who's the first 5 customers? Who's the first 5 people you can work with? And so how can you test your idea with a small group and work with them and see how it goes from there? So you don't go, how do I scale this and build this massively? Just go, how do I test this and try this with a small group and get some great feedback and work out what I can do with it? I think that for me is one of the best places to start and be okay with that. I started my education programs just thinking my community needed it. Then I had a national platform and realized that other places need it. And now we're having conversations to roll it out into 3 regions across the world because they've asked us to come in. But we started with like 38 kids and now I've worked with 23,000. Like just start small and scale it and then build it and just run, something for an hour, something for next to no money and just try it. And once it works, you can then tell the story, gather those numbers and you can go forward.
That's great advice. Thank you very much. Now, I would like to encourage all fellows to post their questions in the chat, to write them down so we can tell them to unmute themselves and ask it. And in the meantime, I'd like to ask you another question. Now, unequal access unequal access is not just limited to material or financial assets or opportunities. Wait, I lost track. It's also extended to a lack of social support systems, and which of course poses a major hindrance in social entrepreneurship. As young leaders, this might be discouraging at times. What would your advice be in this regard to deal more effectively with this feeling of distance?
So again, a lot in that. I love it. The first thing, and I always talk about this, especially with younger people, and like I'm in my mid-30s now, so I generously say young people. I feel like I hope I can still fit in it with my grey hairs. But the first thing I always say is there's 2 types of no. There is a no from someone who is jealous because they couldn't do it at their age, and so they are determined to tell you no. And it's purely because of jealousy. And I've been told countless times, wait your turn. You will have your turn in the sun. Just wait. Now, I have said no to those people because I've realized they were jealous and I get to do the things that I get to do. And listen to the people who say no, but. No, but could you? No, but influence, or no, but recommendation. And so I, first of all, understand that there's 2 types of no's. The other side of things is, one, you're in this group of people, like build relationships, get connections with people. I've got a friend of mine who walks his dog in Chicago and we just send WhatsApp messages back and forth when we have a hard time. And we just chat to each other. I'm often driving to work and he's walking his dog and we're on the opposite side of the world. He complains about snow and I complain that it's 40 degrees outside and we just bounce stuff off. And so find a trusted group of people that you've got. And if it's just, you only need 2 or 3 often to pick you back up again. And so find that small group that you've got, potentially a partner, potentially a really close friend, but realistically someone who knows you. They don't have to understand the drivers of projects and implementation. You just need someone who goes, I care about you and I value you. And that's where it starts. And that's that followership, because you can take them on the journey and work with them. But yeah, you don't need thousands of people, because realistically, we're probably all going to get told more no's than we ever get told yeses. And I'm still getting those where it's just like, oh no, this isn't going to work. And it's like, oh, look, I've done this enough. I've been doing education now for 13 years and I still get invited to run a pilot. And I'm like, I'm going to run the same thing that I ran last week and the same thing I'm about to run next week. And they're all really excited, but you want a pilot because you don't trust this. And it's just like, no, this is going to work. I'm going to back this to the hill, but I've got people who can encourage me in that journey.
That's a great answer. Thank you. It's really good to reframe those no buts as something that can help you move forward. Now, I saw a question in the chat by Ian Shepard. Please, Ian, if you can unmute yourself and ask it.
Of course. Thank you, Carmen, for leading this, and thank you, Adam, for being here today. I wanted to ask a really quick question. When you talk about lived experience, obviously, if one person has lived experience here and one there, the world can't move forward if we just stay in our own lane. So when you're going out into the field and you're trying to understand your target demographic, right? You're trying to build a product or build our projects, for example. How do you kind of build rapport and kind of set the common ground so then you can, work together better for the future? And thank you.
No, amazing question. That's a great one. For me, it's probably my line of work that might give me a different angle on this. So I am often facilitating projects in regions where I'm providing the structure to walk through, but it's their voice that walks through it. And so with that, I can come alongside on the relationship. So if you are coming alongside people and customers and understanding that journey with them, it's about how do you listen to their journey rather than tell them the journey that you want them to go on. And so for me, that's really important that you give them that space, that time, you openly listen, you openly respond. We talk about obviously listening and then acknowledging what they've said and clarifying, is this what you mean, is really important. But also sort of like, don't sort of step so you're trying to talk to every single person. When we're doing our social impact projects like the Shift Lab, I'm asking people who just want to start something. And we start very much, that's the language. We're very careful with our language. I don't talk about social enterprise, even though that's what we start. We actually just talk about, do you just want to make a change in the community? And it's just like, yes. And that's enough of a starting point to go, hey, just tell me your story. What have you done? What do you want to do? Oh, I'm thinking of this. Do you think you can come on the journey with this? And so for me, that's where I would always start, is asking questions, clarifying information really nicely. We don't have all the answers, in a very, very nice way. And so learn from everyone else who can give you answers is a really great place to start. I hope that's a short, sharp answer for that. I want to get through as many of these questions as possible.
That's a great answer. Thank you. It's very important to remember, yeah, how difficult it is to start. And thank you. It's very encouraging. Now, we had a question from Prasid Dingra. If you would like to unmute yourself and ask it, please.
Yeah, so hola Carmen and hello Adam. So my question was like, what are the challenges you faced, Adam, and how can we overcome it? Like, what do you think? Like, what are the steps that as a Millennium Fellow we can take in order to perform better?
Oh, look, there's so many challenges that we can all face. It's really, really hard. I find probably one of the biggest challenges that we'll ever face is like, we use the terminology of imposter syndrome, that you probably don't feel that you're the one that should be here and you're the one that should be doing this. And that's a really hard place to start. But I find often it's because often there's only a few of us that step out and try and do something. A lot of people, we talk about ideas at dinner table conversations. There are so many people who can change the world at a dinner table and just go, hey, we should do this. But no one takes it to start. And you're all probably here because you're going, I'm not leaving the conversation at the dinner table. I want to do something with it. And so first of all, with that sort of thought process, I just sit there and I go, again, the test. Just try it with a small group of people. See how you go with that. Because often the people who are telling you you're not good enough, they're not doing it. They're not out there making this difference. But if you test it and a group of people come back to you and go, this is amazing. I am so excited by this. And again, you do it with a small group and you get their feedback and they'll help you refine it. And you be really open with them and go, hey, I'm still trying to work this out, but I want to go on this journey again. The fellowship sort of stuff, build the relationship with them. I just find time and time again, that just helps break down some barriers in that. And so that would be one of the areas. The other side that I probably think of with the challenges side of things is one of the things that we can do when we're running projects and coming up with ideas is that we can miss the initial steps to help people start. I'm a big one on the fact that the way we use language and the way we frame things it can make it exclusive. And so whenever you're trying to work on a project and trying to get people involved, really take the time to go, how do I simplify this? We do a lot of stuff around that business startup process that we talk about. Like I just ask for people, what's their problem and what's their lived experience? I don't need them to tell me their idea because guess what? I can help them with that. I've seen grant programs where you have to write like a 40-page written document. And guess what? It means you have to be able to write that well and you have to have a computer to send it in. Why is that a barrier? So challenge all of those things and find where you can help reach that. We talk about a ladder. And if the bottom rungs of the ladder don't work, fix those. Don't try and solve it all the way up here. Try and keep connecting with your community and go, hey, why didn't you turn up? What were you involved in? And sometimes it's even the room you host things in. The amount of times I've hosted events at like local government and people don't come into that room and I go down the street to the sports oval and I host it in the club rooms and everyone turns up because they go, I feel welcome in the club rooms, but I don't feel welcome in the council space. Great. I'm coming to the club rooms and I'm going to do exactly the same thing because you feel like you belong in that room. And so just frame up all of those things. Yeah, but I hope that helps. There's so many challenges, but I hope that helps.
Thank you, Adam, for that very complete answer, especially that last part about accessibility, I would say. And another challenge that a fellow asked about is fundraising. So, Mutsepwa Charles, if you would like to ask your question, I hope I pronounce your name right.
Yes, thank you so much. My question is, let's say I'm working on a project and my project is going on well, but in the course of the way, I realize I cannot fulfill this project without funds. Can I go on with this project and solicit for funds, or I just leave it and move on? Thank you.
It's probably a pretty hard one to answer very quickly because there's a lot of experience that you've probably gone on and things in that space that I probably like. I'd want to be asking clarifying questions in a room like this, probably not the right space. But I think probably first of all, really just work through what do you need money for. When I work through establishment costs in businesses, I have a look at like I'm sort of known in that bootstrapping. How do you do something for next to nothing? I started my business. I didn't even buy my first set of business cards until I had a customer because I couldn't pay the bill for the business cards until someone paid me some money. And so I always start from that sort of perspective. The other side of things is also, I come from the social enterprise space. I come from businesses for purpose. And so is there something that you're delivering that's of value that someone would pay for? Just to really think through, I think we get caught a lot of times going for grants, going for funding rounds and going, hey, can you give me some money to do this good work? When actually people would pay for some of the things that you're doing because it's valuable. And I just encourage sometimes that paradigm shift of just going, hey, I could charge this to someone and then do good work for someone else who can't afford it. And so I just encourage just to think different ways of fundraising. If the project is long-term not going to be sustainable, there's probably something that you're already thinking about and aware of. And it's probably, I don't want to jump too far into that, but I think you're probably already considering that stuff. But just really thinking through, is there other ways to raise that revenue and can you deliver value for people? Because if your project is valuable, find where that relationship is to go, hey, if I charge you to do this, would you help me do it over here? It would be one of those ways that I think you can always raise funds if you tell the story really well.
Thank you for such a great answer. We have another question from Annette Nayiga. I don't know if they're available to unmute themselves. If not, they're asking about your past experiences and which were the challenges that you faced in your journey.
The challenges that I faced in my journey. I feel like probably one of the biggest ones is probably that imposter syndrome. And it's actually probably has affected my mental health as well. And I'm like not afraid to talk about that I really struggled a couple of times with like really big peaks and then coming back down going, is this actually really mattering? Is this making a difference? And I've always found like I probably spend half of my year on the road doing the work because I've actually realized I need to be connecting with the people that we help or else I don't see nicely why we do what we do. And so I need to be on the front line. And so I'm running an organization with people working in multiple states, but I'm the one going into schools because I need to see that impact. And I know that's who I am and that's how I work. I guess I've also, one of the biggest challenges is that my health really matters. And so I had glandular fever and appendicitis at the same time. I basically had to stop completely and it took me like 10 months to get over it. It was incredible. And like, you can probably get like, I like doing things and it stopped me. But I've realized through that my health matters, the way I look after myself that matters. Like you will find me regularly running because that for me is my detox zone. That is my focus zone. I put headphones in and no one harasses me. But I know that I've got a rhythm to the point that now my wife will sit there and go, you're starting to get frustrated. Here's your running shoes. Get out of the house and go and do that because that's what helps center you and find you. And so whatever it is for you that helps you focus and do that, if it's meditation, if it's running, if it's catching up with friends, find the rhythm that does that. Because when we get stressed, we cut off, we shut down things like that, and they are the things that help us stay focused and stay on point with that sort of stuff. So just, yeah, that's always like my challenge has been around that health factor. And then also that imposter syndrome and missing the impact. And for me, coming back and connecting with people is really key for that.
So there's, I don't know if Michael Adeyumoye has a question, or if not, if you could please unmute yourself. But yes, that's like a hard line to walk between balancing imposter syndrome and remaining humble, I would say. And there's a question from Anahita Irampur. They've had it since the beginning, so maybe if they're able to unmute themselves, they can ask it.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Perfect. First and foremost, it's a pleasure meeting you. Thank you so much for sharing so many incredibly enlightening insights. I have a bit of a broad question. I hope I can sum it up well. But my main concern as of right now with regards to my social impact project is that basically the main stakeholders or those that I want to reach out to are students from universities in the global south. Specific countries basically, and I find it very intimidating to get in touch with university staff from around the world because at the end of the day I'm just a student and I don't want to come off as, let's say, what's a good word, patronizing, as if I know the issues their societies are facing. Well, yeah, I did some research, I have some background knowledge and personal experience, but it's more sort of raising awareness about communal violence and so on. So what would be a piece of advice you could give to me to convince them for me to collaborate with them without coming off as a know-it-all? Because at the end of the day, I really don't know it all. Thank you so much in advance.
Oh, no, that's such a good question to ask. I look at those stakeholder and partner relationships. I first of all start with how many people can you have, or map out who you want to talk to, and then work out where the warmest conversations are. And by the warmest, the ones that you're connected with, or if you know someone who can connect you with that person, make those relationships. If you're talking to, if you want to get to universities, use a network of students. I feel like there's a few in this room that can help you and that go, hey, I know the right person you can connect to. And so then they can do the introduction. Just like if, like, very nice. I've just spent a little bit of time with my father-in-law at an event and he's known in this town. I'm visiting and everyone's like, oh, if you know him, I think I should talk to you. And I'm like, great, cool. Let's have this conversation. So you use that to your advantage. If you've got students that can help open that door for you, use that. And then really understand what their vision, their values, and their current projects are. What are they working on to find out if they align to what you're doing? If they aren't prioritizing this, you're going to have to do a little bit more education and trust building. But if they're already identifying some of this stuff, they're going to be so excited to hear from you and talk to you in that way because you're going to hit all the things they want to hit. And so I encourage you to do that. And obviously the last thing it's probably moving a little bit further down the path, but every time you have one of these conversations, prepare for the question, okay, I like this. What's your dream outcome? Always prepare for that because I've walked into too many rooms with people who have had really great partnership conversations and starting to build that relationship and they just aren't ready for that. We're sold. What do you want from us? It's like, I'm not ready. So always walk in with, this is what I want out of this conversation. But then obviously, as I said, when you work back, find students that can open doors for you, build that relationship. And you don't have to meet everybody at once. Start with those that you know, build that relationship. And as you get known in those spaces, guess what? People move from uni to uni. They've got friends in all the other unis. So if you can get someone really excited, don't ever hesitate to go, hey, do you know anyone else over there that I can talk to? Oh, yeah, here's 5 people that I can talk to and I'll do an intro for you. Try and do that. But start with your warm ones first.
Thank you, Adam, for reminding us the importance of networking. And I see, do we still have more time for questions, Adam?
I'm here as long as you guys
Okay,
want.
okay.
I'm on a plane in 12 hours, so I'm happy to go as long as you want me to.
Okay, thank you. I see Thomas Ella Jr. has their hand raised if they want to ask their question.
All right. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Thank you. My name is Thomas Ewa from Nigeria, and I actually have a question concerning the project. I've been working on a particular project before the kickoff of this very Millennium Program. And surely in case my cohort member did not actually agree with my own project. So how am I going to align my own project with the one that maybe the fellow will actually agreed on? And aside that, the project has to do with a long-time goal. So that means it's going to exceed the fellowship program, maybe next year or next upper year. So how can the fellowship begin to maybe keep interacting and directing and all sort of things? Thank you.
I don't know if that's one for me to answer. So is there someone else that might be able to help Thomas out?
James, are you on the call? Okay, I'm guessing
Yes,
James
I
is
am.
not.
Yeah,
Thomas,
yes, I am.
okay.
Yeah, thank you, Testimony. Yes, I am, but I'm actually not because that's very specifically programmatic, Thomas. I think let's side chat that and just allow Adam to ask the more questions that are attuned to the talk he just gave. So I'll just shoot my email in the chat and the fellowship email. If we can use those and let's stay in touch, we can always share advice about your your project and all other programmatic details. But for now, maybe back to you, Carmen, to take other questions.
Okay, I see another question from Ijaz. They've had it also since the beginning, if they would like to unmute themselves and ask it.
Hello again. Hello, Adam. Am I audible?
Yes.
Thanks for this incredible discussion, which went all along the changes and challenges. But here is one more, sir. How do you foster a culture of innovation in organizations or communities that may resist their change?
That's a fun one. I wish I could reach for the book that I am reading. I'm reading a book called How to Hack Your Bureaucracy, which is an amazing book. It's like 50 action items that is all about this sort of stuff. For me, it's finding the small changes, the incremental changes you have to start with. You will find people in communities and organizations who are open to change, but there are so many different tactics. When you tell someone the problem is, they start to understand what the challenges are and they can start to get around your perspective. If you don't tell people what the problems are, you're just like, hey, I just want to do this. It's like, but why? You've got to tell people those stories. You've got to find ways that you just basically not so much chip away at it, but you do just start to do the little things and go, hey, how can I get a little step? And then you get really excited and we do the next and we do the next and we do the next. There's so much stuff, but I just find if you're like it, you've got to tell the story. And often I find when people are blocking something, it's worth finding out why. Take the time to have a conversation because often it's a decision maker that's blocking something happening. And I find when I sit down and have a conversation and ask what's going on, it's their lived experience, something that they've done in the past. They just like have been burnt by 4 other things and that you just came along at the wrong time. And it's often that conversation when you find out why is this not working for you is a really open conversation to then start to work out how do I help? How do I lead that change? But with that, there's so much stuff. But as I said, the Marina and Nick are the first names of the authors. As I said, I wish I had it like within arm's reach so I could hold it up for you. But How to Hack Bureaucracy is a book that I'd definitely recommend for you to be reading. And I just think that's a fantastic way to think about it.
We have another question. Thank you, first, Adam. We have another question from Sule Emanuela about how how to stay passionate in this process. I don't know if they would like to expand on that themselves. If so, please raise your hand so we can find you in the chat. And if not, it's pretty straightforward. So
yeah, the passion piece is a really important one. I think, as I said, like for me, I regularly am on the front line, nicely doing the work. I feel like if we're not there, we're not doing it. But I think you've got to remember why and actually be okay with the reason why evolving. I started our school programs because we wanted to help young people explore business. And then I had a conversation with someone about 6 years in, and they said, if our kids walk away and know nothing about business, it's still been a good week. And I'm like, that's not what we started this for. And I had a really amazing conversation with them, and I realized we were actually solving a very different problem. And I got really excited again because of that. And so I started to realize that. And then it kept on going. So know that the journey that you're on will change the passion and the interest in what you're working on. But obviously, the really important part is to basically just keep helping people. And the best, it's a quote that I picked up a number of years ago, but the idea is that you might just change one person's life, but you will change that person's entire world because of what you can create from an impact perspective. And so I just keep coming back to that idea of help, connect, be close to people in what you do, and then just see where they go. Like with the Shift Lab and the conversation that we've sort of just been doing around the incubator and the measurements, it's been really good. I've gone back to people that I've been just talking to over 12 months and just seen what journey they've been on, and it's just reminded me about why we do it. Admittedly, 12 months later is a long time afterwards. But I just find that reinvigorates that passion, because you run into someone and they go, oh, I wouldn't have done this if it wasn't for this conversation. Oh, you've changed this for me. And that for me is really, really valuable to keep having those conversations. So if you're starting to lose touch with the passion, go and have a chat to someone that you've helped and just debrief and see where they're at. And just sometimes, though, if it's like completely waning, maybe it's not the thing to do anymore, and be okay with that. There's nothing wrong with closing a chapter.
that makes a lot of sense. Thank you. We also have a question from the MCN team. In the social impact arena, putting community and humans first in whatever we do is important, and we might lose sight of that while chasing goals. How have you centered humanness in your work, in your years of experience?
What do you mean by humanness? I'm interested in where that's going.
Just making sure that humans are first in whatever product that you create.
I think
as in well-being, like you said in your answer before, I would think.
Yeah. I think first of all, like if people, like we're here to help people. We talk about we're a social enterprise, people and planet first. It's really easy to prioritize that with you put that language around it. The SDGs are for people, for planet, for prosperity, and for peace. And if you aren't working on those elements together, then that's really important. So first of all, frame whatever you are working on with people at the core. We teach a problem frame that's people have a need. It's really important we deliver that, and there is a specific reason why they don't have it. So tell the story from a people-centered perspective, and remember that and remind yourself of that. It's not to say that they are desperate and in need of something in that regard and make them feel small, but it's to just remember that we're here to help someone else in our planet and our world. And so first of all, doing that is really key. And I think then obviously telling the stories, learn the stories of people. The Australian Broadcasting Corporation, the government-funded broadcaster, has an amazing line: never stats without story, never story without stats. That's how they frame every news article. Never stats without story, never story without stats. So you can track numbers, but learn stories. And I feel like once you can tell a story, like I can tell you that we've helped 23,000 students, but I can tell you a student who didn't turn up to school for 14 weeks that turned up to one of our programs who was just, and we were called because it was like, her parents didn't even think she was able to go to school anymore. She came in, she was involved. She then got so excited. We did some testimonials and filmed some stuff. She was at the front of the queue. I got sent her attendance card at the end of the year because she didn't miss a day of school after our program. I can tell you all the numbers of the impact. That story still, like so many years on, reminds me why we do what we do. Capture those stories, learn those stories, put time into going back and connecting with those that you've helped. Again, that medium to long-term change. but collect the stories and just remember that you are changing the lives of people and you need to be focused on that.
That's great advice. Thank you very much. And such a heartwarming story. I also see there is a question from Masidad Olabisi. Let's see if they can ask it.
Hi, good afternoon.
Hello.
So my question is actually that during your talk, you mentioned that it's better we start small, maybe from your community, But however, what happens when even in your community you are trying to solve a problem that about 100 people have, and you know that however you can't take on to 100 people at a time. How do you then prioritize, who goes first? By the time you pick, wouldn't it look like favoritism or picking? I'm just trying to see, is there a more strategic way to go around this selection process?
Yeah, that's a tough one to work through. First and foremost, for me, that test group is potentially people that you're connected with that you invite in, that you then can sit there and go, hey, I'm trying something new. Do you want to just come on the journey with me and start to go from there? We then start to think about, and again, it depends on how it's working. I don't think a selection criteria kind of works if it's a needs-based or there's a level that they've got to get over to get in, to have a limited number of places. But sometimes, like, very nice, like, it's not to say first come, first serve works, but it's be okay with the limit of what you can achieve, because you know that if you have too many people involved, it doesn't work, and you've got to be okay with that. Like, we have numbers on the amount of students that each of our facilitators can work with in schools, because I can't handle a room of 300 students. I can take 100 for a week very comfortably, but I can't take more than that. And I know what that limit is, and we have to enforce that, and we have to be okay with that. And so sit there and go, how do you do that? What is that number? And realistically, if they're the first ones to come in, you're like, great, no problems. I'll get you in for the next group. And it's not to say that it's not valuing that they could be part of it, but just don't overload yourself and try and do too much, because that's often where people start. We talk about coming back to the small because a lot of people go, how do I help everybody at once? And it's like, I'm sorry, it doesn't work that way. It's too hard to start like that. It's got to start somewhere. It's got to build momentum, and you very nicely will probably work out there's a limit and how far you can get to. So I recommend just in that space, just setting a limit and understanding that.
Thank you, Adam, for reminding us of the importance of setting and knowing and enforcing our limits. It's already time. Well, it's the time we set to end, but we could ask a couple more questions if you're comfortable with that. Okay. Then Smruti Tripathi, they've had their hand raised for a while if they would like to speak.
Hi, Adam, and hi, Carmen. It was an amazing session. So most of us, like fellows, are trying to do something within the community of our university, right? We're trying to create actionable change within the setting of a university and trying to help our community and our friends here. So when we're all discussing change, we often talk about change in very abstract terms, but the change has to be some kind of actionable change, right? So how do you try to bring about this sort of actionable change where people's mindset are so stagnant, like where people don't want, where people are just okay with saying that, hey, we're going to prescribe to whatever change that you're saying, but people are not ready to act on that particular change? How do you try to make them act on their particular words, or how do you enforce that in some kind of format?
Well, in some nice way, you can't make people, like, we can't just control people to do things in a very nice way. And I know that's not where you're going with that, but I think, first of all, if they're expecting you to solve a problem for them without them doing any lifting or change, then really nicely, maybe just like they'll get there, but not this. I find also when you go through a really good problem framing process, and sometimes we'll spend, like, when we go through processes, our school programs, we have 5 days with a group of students. We spend 1 day trying to frame the problem. So take the time to go really deep in the reasons why a problem is occurring, Because often I find when you get very deep into that process, there is something that you can fix, something that you can offer, something that you can do differently. I've got, for example, someone I'm working with in the our Shift Lab process that's just sort of raised this idea around people teach literacy programs, basically not great for those who, if they can speak. She's actually working on the idea, if I can write a story from what they say, I can then teach them to read, because I've then learned their own story that they've read. So they've said their story, it's been written up, and then they're learning to read their own story so they can connect their words that they can say back to what they can read. And when you sit there and you go, that's very specific, but you can see how that can work for a group of people. And that's where, for me, you've got to get down into why are problems happening. I talk about being an annoying child in problem framing. Why, and just keep going down. And you get to a point where you go, hey, if we turn it from that to that, it fixes the things up the chain. And that's where it is. Like this, a couple of you have commented on my shirt, which I love. This is a social enterprise that's about men's mental health. This is like a construction tradies shirt, but it's also really nice in warm weather. And it is meant to be bright, because people then ask, that is a really bright shirt. And the thing is, then you sit there and go, this is a conversation starter. It actually says it on the back of the shoulder. And the idea is then to go, how are you actually going? To have a conversation, to start that and go, you know what? Don't just tell me that you're good. Let's have a conversation about how you're feeling. And the QR code in my pocket takes you to Men's Mental Health Support in Australia. Like, it fixes one point in time. And it's a very specific thing. And that's where, when you go down that process of going, hey, why don't we do it? We don't ask our questions about that. We need something, a conversation starter. This is it. And that changes things. And there's been heaps of people that have been changed through that sort of stuff. And I think through all your projects, you'll find there is some specific factor that you can shift. Our school programs, we all know that schools teach for tests. The world is not a test. We teach students to do. It's a very specific thing that we work on. And I encourage you to get very specific about what it is. And you will find that shift that you can make, and there will be a group of people that you can help. And realistically, it's about where you find that group of people that you can help. And as you grow and evolve, it will then more can come around it. But you've got to start with that group that's very specific and you understand that specific factor.
Thank you so much. That was really helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. We have a few more people with their hand raised, but we could also move on to moving remarks as you would prefer.
Oh, no, I don't have anything else to add. I'm just here to chat, except for, like, you can find me on LinkedIn and I want to see your journeys as you go along, but that's about it.
Okay, then thank you. Or would you like some more questions?
Hey, I'm happy to keep going if you are.
It's up to you.
No, let's do it. Let's keep going.
Okay, then I have one question from Alina Tanvir. They've had their hand up for a long time. If they would like to speak.
First of all, thank you so much for this amazing session. And my question is that what was your motivation like in the darkest time or when you were lowest? So what kept you motivated in your journey?
The darkest time and what it was originally is probably very different in that way. Like the original thing was that I like, for me, starting what we do with schools was around, I was involved in a policy situation and I realized how it was not going to work. And I realized that basically no one else was going to change it unless I actually did it. There's a great Lily Tomlin quote, which is, I always thought somebody would do something about it until I realized I was somebody. And that's often where a lot of projects that someone else will do it. Don't worry. And it's like, actually, wait a minute, maybe I'm the one that has to do it. So that's where that came through. In those dark times, I found that I needed a break. I needed a refresh. And then as I started to realize what we did, and again, those stories and what we do, and often having a team around me that would come back to, why did you start it? Why did you do it? And why do you keep going out there and doing all that stuff? Often those conversations start to rekindle that fire that we have. As I said, if it's burnt out, it's burnt out. I work with entrepreneurs. I work in the social impact space. I work in education. For me, I am a never bored person. And I know that I actually need all of those firing for me to get excited. I could not spend my whole time in schools and I could not spend my whole time in businesses. I need to work across all of those platforms because then I get to see different challenges. And that for me is what I've realized has to activate me. And it's that deep understanding of what fires you and motivates you that I feel like has kept on bringing me out of those dark spots because I know what I need and I have people around me who can call it out. My wife is amazing at that. I've got some really good friends that I can just call and they go, I know where you're going and I need to tell you this. And I just encourage you to have those people around. That's the fellowship stuff for me. Who do you talk to? Who do you chat to? Get people that come on the journey with you and they will stick with you, that will be able to have that conversation to go, I know where you're at and I want to help you.
That's such great advice, Adam. Thank you for reminding us to rely on people. And I also see there's a question for quite a while from Mary Jane John Pedro, if they would like to unmute themselves and ask it.
Okay, sure. Hello, everyone. Thank you for this session. So I wanted to ask, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I'm Mary Jane from Nigeria. I wanted to ask, so I'm a medical student and I don't know, I'm asking just general, how do you navigate like combining a medical career or like any career with leadership roles in the environment where like leaderships are not well supported or well understood? Like, for example, when people question you, like, okay, why would you be pursuing leadership initiatives when you're in medical school? How do I tell them that it's my passion, it's something that makes me happy, it's not affecting my school, and I feel like there's no problem in that. Like, medicine doesn't mean that I should only do things in medicine. Like, how do I go about that?
When I was doing architecture as a degree, I took a week out to go and work with some students, and I got criticized by my lecturers when I came back and was basically told, architecture is life. Why are you doing anything else? And I very quickly realized they were not people who were on the journey that I was on. And I was okay with that. And so first of all, if that is the conversation that you're having and you've got some incredible impact that you can make, realistically, they may not be people that you should be getting influence from. And listen, you might genuinely respect what they can do, but they may not understand it. I spend so much time, though, talking about being good human beings. At the end of the day, that's what we're here for. We can do good in what we do, and our job and our career shouldn't define what we do. I often will, and I talk about this, I have a value that I drive myself around and everything. Like, I work in these different fields, but my value is that I believe that I unlock momentum for people. That is my thing. That is what I do. I know people are going to get somewhere. I just help them get there that little bit quicker with more confidence and more clarity. And I can do that in every field. And I am sure that there is some thought process of the reason why you care for the environment the same way you care for people. And that is the story that you tell, and you bring it back to that element for you specifically. But there are things, and there is a connection across it, and it does take some deep reflection to find out what that is. But like, none of us are just our job. There is a passion, there is a fire that drives us, and it probably plays out in all these fields. And then when I start to look at it, and I think if you are just focused on a single-minded career, it's really hard. I always talk about, and I recommend it to young people when I'm working with them in high schools, is that when you work for someone and then when you volunteer in the community, you are always going to get more responsibility when you volunteer. You'll be given the keys to the kingdom and everything else that you can do because someone goes, I will trust you to do it because you are giving me a help. Whereas when you work in a job, the boss will check what you do and look over you and all that sort of stuff. And so for me, every volunteer role shows true leadership and shows an opportunity to get out there and do stuff. And when you can then go for work and apply for that job and say, hey, I've done my studies, but here are all the cool things that I've done over here. I've led people, I've handled funds, I've done all this stuff. Your opportunities open up with that process, but you have to be able to tell the story through it. And so realize that you are building for that passion and that fire. But obviously all those experiences come together to put you in a better place for our world and our community. So I probably very nicely encourage you to keep doing it, because that is obviously incredible to balance both of those. And there will be people who get it. And really nicely, the people who get it are the ones you want to keep working with.
Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
No worries.
Yes, thank you, Adam. That's great advice to also know that you can also pick the people that you work with. You're not the one that always has to be picked. And we have a question from Abu Kamara that they've had since the beginning. So if they could unmute themselves and ask it.
Yeah, hello everybody. Thanks very much. I have learned a lot, and have been motivated and inspired today by Adam. My project actually is working on agripreneurship and science agribusiness. You see, and going to culture as a venture is it after in going in a new venture as agripreneur.
Sorry, Abu. I don't think we can hear you very well. If you could type your question in the chat so we can read it out.
Yeah, I want to hear it, but it's not. I can't quite hear it.
Yeah. In the meantime, we can ask Vanessa to ask a question. Vanessa Ajisogu. If you could unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hello, my name is Vanessa, and the question that I have for Adam is, how can you be able to successfully communicate with your fellow members in a project? Like, how are you going to be able to effectively communicate with them and ensure that you're doing the right work and you're being able to just have a very clear understanding of each other? Like, how do you navigate that?
So I think obviously working in a group of people, first and foremost, before you start anything, and you probably already started, so it's okay to go back and fix this, but work out, like, what does it mean to work together? We always take our students through a process of mapping out team values and effectively writing a rules of engagement list. How do we work together? How do we make this work? Because I find that everybody has different experiences of working in groups. We have probably all done university assignments where there's 5 questions and we try and get one person to do all 5 of them, and then all of us just cruise through. Like, that's not teamwork. That's not how this works either. And so you've got to work out, how do we all talk to each other? How do we work together? We get our students to go through a process where we say, this is what we will do. We won't do this. And if we get off track, this is how we get ourselves back on track, and we get them to sign their names to it. And I'm not saying as formal as that, but have a conversation about, first and foremost, how do we engage as a group? What are we all looking for? And be really open in that conversation to go, this is what I think a good team does and a good group does. And then when you start to go, when you're having to communicate that value, you've already got those rules of how do we talk, how do we work together, how do we understand each other, is set up front. And I think that's really, really important to do it. And then that's where, for me, that problem framing, really taking the time to understand the problem, is important in a group situation, because then you can all talk about how you all see the same problem. Often we come at it from our own perspectives, as I've already said, and that way that we have to tune in supporters is the same way we have to tune in a group. We have to share the story. We have to learn about it. I've been involved in the Unleash Innovation Lab before, and my first project that I was involved in was a project in Sri Lanka that I had no context for, but we had someone that shared it, and we all spent like an hour or 2 understanding that issue with them, to the point that I realized why it was such a massive problem that we all needed to deal with it. But it took the time to understand it and to communicate it and to learn it. And that's where going
Convert this
deep
knowledge
into the
into data
problem to
mining.
solve is really important. So I just encourage, 1, set the rules of engagement. How does your group work together? How do you talk to each other? How do you help each other out? And then make sure that you're all highly aligned around the problem that you see, so that you can share it effectively with others. I hope that helps.
Thank you so much, Adam, for sharing with us your invaluable time, experience, and wisdom. Is there any way that the fellows can contact you directly?
Yeah, so look, probably the simplest and easiest way is using my LinkedIn. The really cool part of having a name like mine is I am the only Adam Mostogol in the world. And so as long as you spell the last name right, you will find me. But as I said, like, genuinely really interested in hearing and seeing, obviously, as you post your journeys in that way. I've got a few hats that I wear, but if I can get back to messages, I like to be able to do that. But I guess encourage you to just take this stuff on board. But I think the other thing is, you've got this incredible group of people around you as well. So learn from each other, ask questions of each other, find out what people are doing and their journeys as well. But that you can get in touch with me by finding me on LinkedIn, and always interested to see your journeys and where you're going, because I'm sure that you've all got incredible impact as you move out from this sort of process.
Thank you, Adam. And to all the Millennium Fellows, keep an eye out on emails for more details. We have upcoming webinars with Andrew Maynard next Wednesday and Jabari Dorsey next Friday. So thank you everyone for joining, and see you next Wednesday.
Thanks,
Goodbye.
everyone.
Thank you, Adam. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye-bye.